Back in January 2022, I binge read the entirety of part 1 of the Chainsaw Man manga. And I came to the conclusion that Chainsaw Man continues the grand anime and manga tradition of making it easy to cosplay if you own professional business attire. I also really liked it if the read 97 chapters in a single night, only taking a break to walk my dog didn't clue you into it. I feel that I should be hyped for the anime to the point where it consumes my life. But against that expectation, I'm not. Like, it's animated by MAPPA. The trailers look great. In fact, one of my issues with the manga, and this applies to Tatsuki Fujimoto's previous work Fire Punch, is that sometimes the panels can be a bit cluttered and hard to make out. And at least in the trailer, it looks like they've cleared up in places that don't drastically change the meaning the original image was meant to convey. I feel like I should have that fire of anticipation burning in my chest. But instead, I have this calm acceptance that it's coming out on October 11th. I feel no hype, and I think I know why. The story of Chainsaw Man warns against falling prey to expectations, and that story is of a boy and his dog on a quest to touch some boobs. I'm going to talk about things that happen in the first 2 volumes of the Chainsaw Man manga, covering chapters 1 through 16. No spoilers for anything too major, but there will be some spoilers. Like, Denji touches boobs. It's necessary for you to know that he touches some boobs in regards to this discussion about hype. Now, we could talk about how the objectification of a certain part of human anatomy opens up Denji to manipulation and misfortune, or how the fact that he does so informs of where his character is at during this part of the story, namely that he's a teenage boy in the midst of a sexual awakening among just general maturing, or the concept of sexual gratification versus forming meaningful connections. But those discussions could take their own videos and would necessitate spoilers of all of part 1 of the Chainsaw Man manga, and we would be a bit off track when discussing hype. The beginning of the story sees Denji and his devil friend Puchita working as freelance devil hunters for some Yakuza thugs to pay back his deceased father's debts. His labor is exploited to the point where he can only eat 1 piece of bread a day. I've been there. This position of lacking makes it understandable that his motivation is to reach a position where he can have bread with jam. Again, don't judge me, I've been there. He tells Puchita that he also wants to hug a girl. Considering that he's a teenager that had to sell off a testicle to pay debts, he realizes how far off this want is untenable, since he can't even fulfill his needs of adequate shelter and substance. This sets up the motivations of our protagonist. We understand his goals. Denji wants to eat better food and make meaningful human connections, initially in the form of a hug. I say initially because what tends to happen when people get what they need? They want more. Within chapter 1, Denji is betrayed by his Yakuza handlers and becomes the titular Chainsaw Man, and is recruited by Makima, a launcher of 1,000 simps, Denji included. Look at how they meet. It's with a hug. Denji has already accomplished his want. Then she offers Denji employment as a public safety devil hunter, where he'll be able to eat actual food, including bread with butter and jam. Notice how it's not just bread with jam. She offers it with butter too. Not only does Denji take care of his needs, he gets more than what he wished for. But it comes with a catch. And I'm not just talking about Denji needing to accept a job and be another cog in a capitalist hellscape. Makima gave him a choice. Be my pet or die. His wants and needs are just collateral to being Makima's pet. Any hype for better food and hugging someone he might have felt gets a little undercut by the death threat. Makima buys Denji noodles on the way back to her office, but a man asks for help with a devil that took his daughter. Makima sends Denji since she doesn't want her noodles to get soggy, and reiterates her previous death threat, likening Denji to a useless dog getting euthanized. This is the first woman that Denji hugged. Something that he wanted and thought of is out of his reach. We ask if Denji really is better off getting what he wanted, considering the circumstances of how he attained, or perhaps more accurately was thrust upon him. Despite her treatment of him, Denji still likes Makima. And he didn't even see that panel of her at the beach yet. He begins to want more. He wants better food. He wants to go past hugging. He wants to touch some boobs. And spoilers, he touches some boobs in chapter 12 of 97. Denji gets partnered with a blood fiend named Power, who offers to let Denji touch her boobs in exchange for saving her cat. After some wacky hijinks, they save the cat, and she keeps her end of the bargain. He gets 3 squeezes. But on the first one, Denji realizes something is wrong. Power patted her chest. The boobs he repeatedly looked at were never real. His fantasy crashes and burns in confusion and disappointment. The next 2 squeezes are on her real boobs, but the misdirection threw Denji off and ruined the moment for him. It killed the hype of touching boobs for the first time. You see, the boobs work as a metaphor. They represent Denji's wants as a parallel to the 3 meals a day represents his needs. And if you know how part 1 ends, you know how those needs and wants connect. I'm not going to spoil it now, and I will talk about it in a future video, and we'll just say that there is more than one way to eat an ass. Now, just watch as the anime only covers half of the story and takes 4 years to come out with season 2 as the universe's way to punish people who refuse to read the manga. Notice how cold and impersonal the interaction is, with Power acting a part and dropping it as soon as the last squeeze is finished. Denji is in a funk over the next couple pages. The hype is dead. Replace the boobs with an anime adaptation of a popular manga. People look forward to it. They actively want it. But what if it ends up sucking? What if they change plot points? What if they overuse CGI in a mostly 2D animated series? The boobs were fine without the padding. But we don't get to decide on if the padding is there. We shouldn't tell the artist how to tell the story, like we shouldn't tell someone how to dress. We might get that feeling of disappointment, but we can choose how we respond to it. Denji is an immature teenager. He doesn't know how to react. He doesn't realize how badly Makima is treating him. He doesn't see how his expectations of what he wants is setting himself up for disappointment to hit him hard and open him up to being manipulated. Like how just because something has a beautiful trailer, it's not a guarantee that what the trailer is trying to advertise to you is going to be good. Denji doesn't realize he's still got to touch some boobs. Just like if you read the manga, you still got to experience the story of Chainsaw Man. If the anime doesn't live up to the hype, that doesn't erase your previous experience of reading it. You just need to choose how you respond to it. You can let yourself be distracted by the first squeeze or revel in the next 2. So yeah, Chainsaw Man is boobs. In the same chapter, Makima allows Denji to touch her boobs. Being the boobs that inspired him to make it a goal to touch boobs, Denji has an equal but opposite reaction. Instead of being unable to articulate his feelings of disappointment and confusion, he is overwhelmed with excitement. Touching some boobs seems to live up to the hype. But then, Makima asks him to kill the devil that poses the biggest threat known to mankind, the gun devil, in exchange for whatever he wants from her. This has shown that Denji views it as a win for himself, but it is not a win for Denji. He's letting his hype blind him to being manipulated. Look at that beautiful trailer that just dropped. Just wait for the birthday cake. Chainsaw Man is gracious enough to tell us its central theme by hiding it in a character's backstory. This little shit interrupts his family telling the story of the town mouse and the country mouse. This isn't just a random one of Aesop's fables thrown in. Denji takes many cues from the country mouse, and his story mirrors the fable. If you don't know the story, the town mouse visits the country mouse and sees the poverty that the country mouse lives in. Speaks about all the great food and other luxuries of the town. In other words, hype. They go to the town and eat the aforementioned great food in a mansion, but they're attacked by a cat. And when that cat leaves, a dog arrives. According to the read.gov copy of the story, the message is, poverty with security is better than plenty in the midst of fear and uncertainty. Denji, being an analog to the country mouse, obviously comes from the countryside. He's poor, he sells his organs for money. He eats a slice of bread for an entire meal. Don't fucking judge me. He gets picked up by Makima and brought to the city with the promise of 3 meals a day. But the city is full of dangers that threaten to kill Denji before he can enjoy the benefits of living in the city. Makima puts Denji in a squad overseen by Aki, the little shit from the backstory flashback, and makes Aki have Denji live with him in his shitty apartment. To be fair to the shitty apartment, it didn't become shitty until Power moved in, because she doesn't flush the toilet. And some people think she's the best girl of the series. She's not. Beam is. Before Power moved in, however, Denji loves the basic amenities that he lacked in the countryside. Then Power shits all over the things that he was excited about. She nitpicks her food and throws it away. She doesn't bathe. She doesn't flush. It's just like the boobs. Denji has positive changes to the situation he starts the story in, but there's always a catch or something that blindsides him. We are the country mouse, and the Chainsaw Man anime adaptation is the city right now. Even in the trailer, we see changes. There are scenes that aren't in the manga. There is a cat waiting around the corner, ready to pounce. But we don't know the cat's intentions. Take this beach scene. Those of us who read the manga know what happens on a beach. Is it just a reference for the manga readers to remind them of that event? Is it an addition that allows for more character building and provides a more traditional beach episode? Will it even replace another part of the story? The food is there. We just need to go into the city and face the cat. And until we do, we don't know how it'll end up. Hopefully for the better. I thought I'd be feeling hyped for the anime adaptation of Chainsaw Man, and I attribute that lack of hype to the part of my interpretation of the story that I just shared with you. It's easy to see why someone would be hyped for it, though. I honestly think that it has what it needs to be good. I love the source material, and I enjoyed going through those first 2 volumes to make this video. I needed to force myself not to go on tangents when writing this script about the character interactions or how Chainsaw Man plays with the story of the town mouse and the country mouse, which I'll save for future videos. It's a fun story to talk about, and your personal interpretation can help you understand yourself better. And you get to see a guy with a chainsaw head get into fights. So the anime adaptation is being produced by MAPPA. Here are a few clips from Jujutsu Kaisen episode 19, which they also adapted from manga to anime. Finding the artist that did this to Chainsaw Man should be a winning prospect. In fact, Ryu Nakayama, who directed that episode, is a director for the series. And considering the action scenes that happen in the Chainsaw manga, I think it's a very good fit. The screenplay is by Hiroshi Seko, who also worked on Jujutsu Kaisen, as well as the adaptations of Mob Psycho and Dorohedoro. MAPPA also did Attack on Titan the final season, and I guess that was okay. I didn't watch it because I know how to read. Interpret that as you will for my thoughts on the end of Attack on Titan. I previously gave the moral of the town mouse and the country mouse story as poverty with security is better than plenty in the midst of fear and uncertainty. I don't think that Chainsaw Man agrees with that. One, it's obvious that Denji doesn't live with security and poverty. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that poverty is a lack of financial security where it is difficult to meet basic needs to survive. Denji goes to the city. He eats good food. He ends up forming meaningful connections that we see have a rocky start in the first 2 volumes. He gets the shit kicked out of him by the metaphorical cat and dog. Nothing is what it was hyped to be. But he grows as a person having gone through those experiences. It's the attitude of, still got to touch some boobs. Better to have touched and lost than to have never touched at all. That's one of the main things I got from the story. You move toward your goals, but you need to be realistic about what might happen while not succumbing to negativity. Despite everything that I've said, I guess I can say that I am looking forward to watching the Chainsaw Man anime, even if the excitement I thought I would have as the October release date approached failed to manifest. I believe the ingredients are there for the anime to be great. I wouldn't be surprised that while watching the first episode, the hype enters my body like... In my opinion, Chainsaw Man has a good story that is told well. And I think it's a good thing that more people will be exposed to it. But that story warns me with a, what if it sucks? There's always a chance that parts of the story get lost in the translation to another medium, or there are changes that don't work and make the story lesser, like the anime adaptation of Tokyo Ghoul. There is the danger of the country mouse going to the city. On the other hand, how Chainsaw Man uses the fable of the town mouse and the country mouse provides solace. Even if the anime ends up sucking, we still have the manga and how it made us feel. Like many things that happen in Genji's journey to a better life, something bad might blindside us like Komeni's car. But we still have the progression in a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of way. That's one of the messages that I found in Chainsaw Man. Things might suck. In fact, they most likely will suck. There's no reason not to make an effort and hide from change. It's like touching the boobs of someone who ruins your life on your birthday. You might need to cut your losses on that birthday, but you still got to touch those boobs. Except in this case, the boobs are the Chainsaw Man manga and the birthday is the anime. I've lost the metaphor. I'm going to shut up now. Halloween.